Yo, 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 what's going on Facebook, YouTube family? It's your boy C-Blood, C-Blood Too Cool.
To the world I'm C-Blood, to the game I'm C-Leech.
Listen up, so I was looking for some new subjects to talk about, and one of my patrons hit me up and they told me they wanted me to talk about parenting. The reason so is because she's a young lady, she's divorced, she has a daughter, and her daughter's father, she said, is a narcissist, and he speaks to her in a way where pretty much he speaks down to her all the time, which was the same thing that he did to her mother, and ended up them getting a divorce, you know what I'm saying, always speaking down. And so I wanted to say something to y'all real quick. Of course, you know, all of us, we got parents, whether good or bad, or our parents right now, whether good or bad. And y'all know, like, when we get to a certain age, probably around, you know, 13, you start realizing your parents be tripping sometimes. Let's be honest. You start seeing the flaws in your parents. And so something that God showed me, like, I had great parents, you know, my mother, my father raised me, but as I grew older, I started seeing the different flaws, how they were in certain areas, how their emotions worked, how they were detached in certain things, and ultimately, I had to realize to say, dang, Carl, like, you know, they're not as perfect as you thought they were. And sometimes growing up for us, the flaws that they have end up becoming our fears. Let's say if you grew up and your parents were married and they go through a divorce and you watched that process, or you grew up and you saw your parents in an abusive relationship, or you grew up and you saw your parents in detachment from their emotions, their flaws become your fear as far as growing up. And for me personally, I was like, dang, you know, I can only go as far as my parents, you know, like your parents can only teach you what they know. And so something that God had to show me, and I want y'all to pay attention to this. He said, Carl, I understand, you know, you know, you see the flaws in your parents and things like that. But one thing, he said, if you want to go further than your parents, you're going to have to look beyond them. He said, if you want to go further than your parents, you're going to have to look beyond them. And like I said, your parents can only show you what they know. And even if you are a parent, you can only show your child what you know. So there's only a certain level and degree that you can get to. And the thing is, because of your flaws are going to give a cap to a certain area of your child's life, just like they did to us. Pointing out things to my own parents, God told me I had to look beyond them to go further than they are, meaning that I had to look at Him. I had to look and say, okay, God, how do I deal with this situation? How can I believe in trust? How can I believe in loyalty? How can I believe in integrity and not being a narcissist? You know what I'm saying? When my father has always spoken down to me, or my parents have never been there for me, or whatever it may be, he said, look beyond them, because they're all flawed, just like we are all flawed. So God had to show me, you know, different ways to cope, and not just cope, but ways to overcome, and how to get the characteristics that they lacked. And so, yes, our children should be better than us. Yes, we should always be speaking life into them, but that's not always the case, and that hasn't been the case for our lives. But I just want to encourage everybody watching this video, listen, to go further than your parents have, to go further than the people who raised you have, you got to look beyond them. God has everything. He has instructions and plans on every single thing. No matter if they weren't there for you, no matter if they didn't believe you in the situation, no matter if they put other people before you growing up. Regardless of those things, you don't have to be what life says you have to be. Most of the time I say, my father wasn't there, so I have to hate him. My mother wasn't there, so I have to hate her. My dad was a narcissist, so I have to hate him. They failed in their marriage, so I have to fail in mine. Understand, listen, the enemy tries to put that in your mind. Bump all of that. You can be exactly the perfected thing that God created you to be. He created to stay in perfection, and it's sin and our lust in our own minds and the desires of our own hearts that have taken us away from the perfection that God has created us to be. So understand, listen, look beyond your parents. For that young lady, look beyond your father. For that young man, look beyond your parents. And understand that if you look beyond them and look at God Himself, get in the Word, study the Scriptures, figure out what it is to be a man in Ephesians 5. Figure out what it is to be a woman in Proverbs chapter 31. Figure out these things and apply those characteristics to your life. And everything that your parents lacked, you'll be able to gain. All right? So shout out to everybody watching. Just join. It's C-Blood Too Cool. Hit me up on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff like that, in the links above or below. Please become a patron. There's a link for that as well. So love y'all. It's C-Blood Too Cool. Ain't nothing stopping us. Young adults, Christ life, no sweat loss. Let's go.
They don't want us in the street.